On this video, I'm joined by late diagnosed autistic author and proud Aussie, just like me, Josephine Moon. We're going to chat about her awesome new novel featuring an all neurodivergent cast. Let's go. Welcome, my friend. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about helping you raise your level of understanding, acceptance, and appreciation of the autistic community. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I'd be delighted if you'd join my very amazing YouTube community. And don't forget to check out my brand new dedicated podcast channel, nothing but video podcasts, Orion Kelly Podcasts. Well, today we are joined by an extraordinary guest, internationally recognised best-selling author Josephine Moon, a passionate advocate for neurodivergent people, recently shared her own autism and ADHD identities with the world. And her latest book, The Wonderful Thing About Phoenix Rose, is a beautiful piece of contemporary fiction that features an all-autistic cast, a first for Australian publishing. Now, in this novel, Josephine shares her own experiences with neurodivergence, reflecting what it's like to live with these conditions in a world that's often fails to understand them. Josephine, also a celebrated author of 30 fiction, but today we'll be talking about her latest book and her journey as an autistic author. Josephine, welcome, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. And that is quite the introduction. Thank you. I feel very special.
Josephine, for people watching my YouTube channel, there's people everywhere. So tell us about your journey of discovering autism and ADHD. I guess, how has it impacted you as a person and what you do for a living?
Yeah, well, I think like so many late identified people, it started with my child's identification. And then, and I had filled out loads and loads of the forms, and I went back to the clinical psychologist and said, I'm filling out like everything in here as well. Like particularly my sensory profile is really kind of off the chart. Like I'm that person who is, what is that noise? Where is it? What is that smell? What is that? I'm chasing down everything. Can't get out of the house because there's some kind of grit in my sock somewhere. Like I am that person. So my sensory profile is really, really, really high. And she kind of dismissed me. So this was back in, this was like maybe nearly 7 years ago. And she sort of gave me a really hard look. And it's funny because she said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm an author. And she gave me this really hard look and went, you guys are often a bit different. I was like, right. And then she went, but your eye contact's too good. You can't be autistic, right? So straight to the one of the number one myths, and which is really disappointing that she clearly knew a lot about identifying people, but just for whatever reason missed that. But she said, bring in the dad. I need to see the dad. So take in the husband, and she's like, yeah, you're autistic and you're ADHD. And then my husband kind of did nothing with that for the time being. He sort of just put it in a drawer. And then we'd had a visiting psychologist coming because my son then had some funding. He's a psychologist who would come to our house and do some work. And she'd been coming to us for years. She obviously knew me really well because we'd spent a lot of time talking. And one day when she was here, she just said to me, these are her words, I consider you high-functioning autistic. And I was like, what? Like, just really sort of, because someone else had just gone, no, you're not. And then she's gone, yes, you are. And then it sort of just got left there. And so I sort of sat with that for a couple of years. And then I was seeing another psychologist and I raised it with her. And she was like, no, you're not autistic. And she said, but I think you've got a social communication disorder. I was like, okay. And then eventually I was like, oh, look, I need a full proper assessment of this. And I didn't do any research prior to that. I really didn't. I mean, I was very confused actually because I'd been really indoctrinated by all the sort of stereotypes of autism and what it looks like. And my son doesn't actually match a lot of those stereotypes. And I was kind of going, I want him reassessed because he's not matching what the world is telling me he should be like. And so I did all that and they're like, no, definitely autistic. And I was like, right, okay. And then I did my assessment and she's like, yeah, you're definitely autistic. And I was like, wow, okay. So that was kind of a lot of processing. The ADHD one actually threw me a lot more because my husband then went to, look for medication to help him. And after he'd been seeing his psychiatrist for a while, he came back and said to me, I think you're ADHD. And I was like, you're absolutely bonkers. There's no way I'm ADHD. Because he's the quintessential Tigger, right? He's the stereotype. He's the fast-talking, fast-moving, bouncing, always on the go kind of guy. And I'm just like, I am exhausted. Like, I am not this person. And he just kept saying, no, I really think you are. And then, yeah, like again, I didn't do any research. I just rocked up to the first appointment. I had written down some things I was really struggling with and said, look, this is what I'm struggling with. I don't know if this is ADHD or anything else. What do you reckon? And like 5 minutes in, they were like, we're going to get you some medication. You're going to feel a lot better really soon. Like, I was like, seriously? Like, it's that obvious. So yeah, it was a really unexpected. I mean, it was both unexpected. The autism one, I was like, okay, that makes so much sense. That kind of explains my whole life. ADHD, yeah, that blew me out of the water. I never, ever would have picked that. Not at all.
Mm.
Yeah.
I need to just take a beat here before we get back to the questions and I guess just talk to you about how deeply your story resonates with me.
Yeah.
And you can interrupt at any time and chime in. But can I say there's nothing about your story that isn't my story?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a 9-year-old autistic son, but for his diagnosis, I may have never known. Of course, prior to that, I just thought I was a crap person. I just thought I was a bad person or I was broke. I actually decided to agree with myself that I was just born to suffer. That's actually what I thought.
Yeah.
But for my kid, would it have come? And, you're right. From the GP referral to the first psychiatrist I saw, told me I made eye contact too many times in our consult. And also I went to uni, so I can't be autistic. We're talking about modern day Australia and the healthcare professionals, not all, but there's a large percentage that are significantly undereducated with modern day science. And that's an issue. Of course, I was lucky enough to then be referred to a psychiatrist that actually wanted to specialize in it and know what they were talking about. And, after the pretty rigorous sessions, you got a diagnosis. Mine was autism and, generalized anxiety disorder and socialized anxiety disorder. But they were kind of like added bonuses. But it was very interesting because, your experience, honestly, I don't know how much more similar it can get without being the same. It really got me thinking. And, Josephine, I would be lying if I didn't say the majority of people probably watching you right now are high masking autistic women. Probably because, and I'm sure you'll agree, I'm one of the more attractive people you've probably ever seen in your life. That's why they like to watch me. This is a joke. I'm kidding. It's a joke. Right now you're talking to high masking autistic women. Now you're also talking to some amazing autistic guys and some parents and carers and all that kind of stuff. But I know because they comment. And they struggle and they think, they're being told, oh no, you've got like personality disorder, or oh no, you've got this or that. And I don't think your story could help. Put your book aside, could help more people watching this right now than these undiagnosed, potentially, or misdiagnosed high masking autistic women. Yeah. Your story is probably their story too. This is a worldwide issue.
Yeah, massively. And just, the gendered kind of obstacles that women face in this process are huge. And if I hadn't gone back, I would have just accepted the first person who went, no, you're not autistic, and gone, oh, okay. And had not then another psychologist gone, you're autistic, I'd still be just going, what? I'm the only, typical one in the family. and I'm not. But yeah, it's, and women are trained, from a younger age to be a lot more compliant and a lot more kind of, you have to fit in with the social group a lot more. I'm not saying it's not hard for males. It is, absolutely. But, there's safety in numbers for women. And so women need other women. And there's that whole kind of extra, you can't be too different because then you're
you kind of get social training too, don't you, from your parents and your peers, more than we do probably. Yeah. And I also, read research that autistic women have a higher degree of social motivation than autistic men for some reason, meaning that there's some sort of drive inside them where they actually do want to connect to some degree more than, which makes it even easier to come across masking, come across like you're not autistic when you clearly are. But You know, it affected me mentally very badly, the first initial consult that kind of just dismissed it. Did it have an impact on you, the first misdiagnosis?
I think I was very confused because, I mean, I couldn't deny. I mean, there's a couple of issues there. One, I couldn't deny that whole sensory processing thing is like, well, so what? Am I just going to walk away with I've got a history of not fitting in and being bullied and having anxiety, and I have a sensory processing disorder? We're just going to leave it at that. And so I was kind of confused, I guess. And then, you know, having been bombarded with all of the, you know, it's terrible. It's tragedy to have a child with autism, you know, all of that stuff we've been given over the years. It was just a very, very confusing time. And we had so much, actually what was really surprising was we had so much backlash from other people over my son's identity, which was really unexpected. It was like a time that was very confusing and I really needed support. And I needed to be able to talk about it. And people were just shutting doors in my face. They were just like, don't believe it. My child's like that too. Like just shut down the whole way. And I was just, it was a really difficult time there for a few years. Yeah.
Yeah. The sensory stuff I can totally relate to too. It's really interesting how similar, you know, like I'm the guy that's always like, what's that smell? Of course, my wife can't smell it. There is no smell. No, there is a smell, and she'll finally work out, oh yeah, you smelt the thing inside the other house down 2 streets down, you know, what's the...
He's always like, you're the person who's go, what's that smell? And he's like, there's a nappy 3 suburbs away. That's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, literally, so I will find stuff in the house that no one else knew. Yeah. Or I'll be startled by sounds, or what's that noise? What's that beeping? You know? Yeah. We're very much have similar experiences. So and you know what, I totally can relate to you too, this idea that, you know, and I get this on YouTube comments a lot. You're not autistic. You know, my son, he's autistic. You know, he has 3 comorbidities and doesn't speak. Well, no, he's non-speaking, but you know, he or she has the potential to, you know, to still do things. They have different support needs. But anyway, so yeah, I totally dig what you're saying. So you, as an author, do you think that your personal experience of not being diagnosed at, say, my child or your child's age, but as an adult, late diagnosed, do you think that's influenced you in how you want neurodivergent characters to be portrayed as an author? Because would it be fair to say, as of the moment, it's done pretty badly? Has it impacted, you know, your...
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, unequivocally. I mean, to begin to write a novel takes a really long time. So you've got to be really invested in the story in order to stick with it, you know, for that long. So, so I've got to be super passionate about it in order to sort of jump on it. But I think, yes, you're absolutely right. Historically, we've seen autism presented in a very, very narrow band of, and a very negative presentation of autism over the years. I mean, we've got Rain Man, we've got Sheldon, or they're the butt of the jokes, right? So they're the comedy value somewhere. And it's almost always boys, and they're almost always white, and they're always, like, we have this incredibly, incredibly narrow group of sort of stories to look at. And yeah, very much. I just thought, you know, we've started to see some YA stories coming through. So stories written for young adults, teenagers, with teenage protagonists and some female ones. And then, but, you know, I looked around and I thought, well, I haven't seen anything in the adult fiction world at all in Australia at that point. I know Holly Smale has one coming out in England in April as well. But yeah, we just haven't seen much of that. And it just, I think it was so much for me because it was such an overwhelming thing, it was such a huge thing, an overwhelming thing, a big thing to process. I found for the first time that connection with community, with other, you know, your neuro tribe, so the other neurodivergent people. And that was where I learnt all the things that are relevant and important to me and to know. That is where I've learnt and how to understand myself and how to sort of get through life is from Neurokin. And that was such a massive support and so important and such a protective measure, I think, that I just really wanted to celebrate that whole connection, because as you have articulated, there is such a dearth of understanding from the people we think should know doctors, psychologists, teachers, teacher aides, but I'm not saying all of them, but obviously there's a massive amount. I mean, the number of people who come to me and say, I was thinking my kid might be autistic, but I went to the GP and the GP said they're not autistic, and that's it. And that's closed the conversation, like that's not an assessment. That's just this person could sit still for 3 minutes and look you in the eye and have a sentence. That's all that is. Yeah, so I just really wanted to celebrate the strength of the neurodivergent community.
Yeah, I mean, as an autistic content creator, kind of advocating, it's a daily battle. I feel like, even though I'm putting out videos and I'm doing my best, in my way. So, like shorts and videos and podcasts, I'm doing it in my way to help kind of educate and engage and entertain. I feel like I'll never be able to score it or rate how I'm doing, because it is so hard to feel like you're ever making any progress. You just need to, have a kid in school to realize, like, literally the clock stops every term just about and you're starting again. But I'm really intrigued. So you decided, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a novel, I'm going to have a neurodivergent cast. I'm really intrigued about this experience. So you're crafting a story with an all neurodivergent cast.
Nearly.
I get this all the time when I'm doing a video. I get this all the time. Like, I have to say, I'm only using my experiences. I'm only speaking on my behalf. I find it really hard to try and work out, am I conveying in a wrong way, or people think I'm talking about them? Yeah. What kind of challenges do you have crafting a story with that in mind, with a neurodivergent cast? There must be, I can't even imagine.
It was so much, I felt so much pressure in so many ways. And one of the biggest one that I felt was, because this was this absence of this representation in adult contemporary fiction in this country, or in most countries, I'm guessing. I know that there will be so many people out there who want to see themselves represented on the page. And of course, I can't represent everybody on the page. And my experience is very different to, somebody of a different culture, in a different country, a different gender, a different skin color, all of those things. I'm a very, I love the term high privileging. I'm a high privileging autistic. I've got a tertiary degree. I'm a middle-class white person in Australia. Like, that's high privileging. It's very, very difficult to even, as to even get a diagnosis. It's very costly. It's very time-consuming. It's all of those things. So I know that I know that people will be disappointed, because they're desperate to see a validation of their own experience. I couldn't get all of those on the page. So that really was the biggest stress that I had about it, when I just had to block those voices out, basically, and just write. And when you're writing, though, I mean, I'm not writing about real people. I'm writing about the characters who come. And that's part of the magic of writing. It's the part of writing I love so much, is when characters, you sort of start going, I'm going to have this sort of character, and you sort of mucking around with them for a bit, and then at some point they just come to life off the page. And when they start talking and I don't have to put words in their mouth, that's the beautiful moment, for writing. That's the writer's high, when it's just they're alive and I don't have to do so much work anymore. So, they're very much their own characters. They're definitely not representative of real people. I mean, obviously Phoenix Rose, the main character, being a teacher, because I used to be a teacher, has, a lot of my sort of teaching experience in her. But even she's her own character as well, with her own history. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know that many. I still don't know that many actual neurodivergent people. So I couldn't draw from real people anyway. But yeah, I did feel a lot of pressure. And I felt a lot of pressure because it is a new thing in this country, and that can go either way. If people are ready for it, then they'll pick it up and run with it. But if they're not ready for it, then, I really have no idea how it's going to fly out there.
How do you reckon your experience as a teacher kind of influenced your portrayal of Phoenix Rose as a neurodivergent teacher?
Yeah, well, because I think for me, that whole experience of teaching is a really emotional one, because I was really drawn to it because I genuinely love teaching. What I love, though, is that I love planning. Like, I love the creativity of it. I love the planning of it, being able to take information and breaking it down and presenting it in a way that people can understand and engage with and run with it. And I love working one-on-one with kids. And that just doesn't really exist in a school environment. And I absolutely burnt out of there so fast. I mean, the sensory overload, I didn't understand myself, of course. I didn't have a clue what that was going to feel like. But the sensory overload, particularly in high school, because you've got like 6 classes in a day, right? And you've got staff and parents, and so you're dealing with hundreds of personalities a day, and you're talking almost non-stop, and you never get away from the noise. There is nowhere to escape the noise. So all of that stuff burnt me out really, really quickly, and it was really sad. I felt like a real failure, actually, of dropping out of teaching. And I sort of did short bits here and there, and I did a little bit in primary, which is a bit easier on a sensory level, but still just exhausting. And, you know, I would dream about it in my head at night and plan constantly. I just couldn't cope with that, just the constantness of it. So it was sad, and so it was nice to be able to envision, you know, like Phoenix kind of starts advocating for a potentially new vision. She knows she's not going to get it now, and the school system's not ready for it now, but there is a potential vision there in the future that could be achieved with not a lot of effort, really, from the school system. So, yeah, it was my chance to put a bit of a few seeds out there and hope someone picks them up and runs with them, maybe.
I'll tell you, I have meetings with the school regularly, my wife and I, in a proactive way, in a really positive way. But it really is such a minefield, you know, with just having a 9-year-old. So I can totally understand the experiences you've gone through. You brought up something that I'll have to stop for a second, just quickly reflect on. Autistic people, before they're diagnosed, they find a way to do a job. It becomes too much. They do get a diagnosis, and one reason or another, you know, they feel like a failure, or they feel like you know, they've failed themselves or their career because it's something that they can't do anymore. I hear this a lot from people, like people go, "Why can't you do your job anymore? You used to be able to do it. Now you got a diagnosis, and you know, and or why do you need these supports now? You need them before." And I think it's a really interesting experience, and I think it's, you know, from my point of view, it's a battle with people that don't care or don't want, because they go, you know, how can it be possible to be one, and then the next day, you know, you're more autistic now than you ever were. Do you know what I'm saying? Isn't it a weird thing to reconcile?
Incredibly so. And I mean, the reality is I was burning out of careers constantly. It was one of the, actually, during my sort of diagnostic process, it was one of the clearest patterns my psychologist picked up, was this constant, like, I did this career and then I burned out, and I did this career and then I burned out, and I did this and I just burnt out. It was just this constant cycle. So, you know, I've been trying to find this sort of perfect space for me, which is why it was kind of one of the reasons I was drawn to being a writer, was because I thought, I mean, this is when I decided I wanted to be a writer, it was 1999, right? So we didn't even have barely the internet, let alone social media or anything like that. And so in my head, it was this great, I could just sit in a room by myself in the quiet, in my own little world with these characters. And it was like, this would be the perfect job for me. And over the years, the demands on authors have just gotten higher and higher and higher, and in terms of publicity and being, like, doing tours and being in front of people and social media and all of that sort of stuff, which I find really hard to manage. And I find incredibly difficult, to reconcile that with this completely opposite part of me, which is this quiet, introverted, I don't want to talk to anyone, I just want to sit in my room and write kind of thing. I think I've gotten way off track there. I do that a lot. Am I answering your question? I can't remember.
That's good. I want to talk about the book with regards to your passion, your passion for animals. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's definitely a focus on horses in your past. I think I'm right in saying that. But tell us a bit about your personal experiences with animals and how that's influenced your writing and some of the characters in the book.
Yeah, well, I think every one of my novels I have written in an animal character there somewhere, because they are so important to me, and they've always been the place I go to for, you know, everything. They're my fun. They're coming. There's cats sitting over there right now. There's always one with me somewhere. And I just had always wanted to really supersize it. So I guess, you know, stories always come from a few different directions at once. And one of them was definitely this idea of this, you know, neurodivergent teacher and this idea of community. But I have long wanted to write a road trip story, because I just think they're really fun. And my previous book was kind of a road trip. It was a train trip that I did with my characters on the GAN from the top of Australia down to the bottom. And I really enjoyed that, and I thought that was really fun. And so I thought, I want to do a road trip. And then the other one was, you know, the animals that I always thought, well, if I go back, right, I know, grasshoppering around, I'm going to go back to when I was in year 11. And so I wanted to be a vet, because I loved animals. Now, I do know now that I could never have been a vet because I'm way too emotional, way too sensitive, and I hate giving injections, which I have to do. If you have horses, you end up giving injections. I can't stand it. So I was never going to be a vet. But at the time, I was really kind of heartbroken because physics and I, back then you had to be able to do physics, don't anymore. Physics and I were never going to get on. And so that quickly was like, okay, that's just destroyed my whole dream and I have no idea what to do. And my sister gave me a book of James Herriot's vet stories for my 16th birthday. And I love James Herriot. He's the most incredible writer. Quite unfair that he's a vet and a talented writer and all these other things. But he just, his words, the way he portrays, the village life and animals, and I love little small village stories. I thought, I should be a writer, actually. And then I can write about animals. In fact, I can write about anything I want, right? If I want to write about the environment, I can do that. If I want to write animals, you can just take that skill across so many different areas. So, I'd always wanted to write about animals. And then somehow I ended up branding myself as this foodie fiction writer. And I was kind of kept wedging animals in there in the story, but I still was really longing to write about animals. And I thought, this is my chance to just supersize that whole love of animals. And instead of just one character, I'm going to have heaps. And I mean, what could bring you more chaos, more fun, more disaster than having a whole bunch of animals on a road trip from Tasmania to Brisbane?
I want to talk about the road trip, okay? So your novel features a road trip. Obviously, it's a major plot point. Now, this is really interesting, okay, because you've talked about sensory stuff. I have sensory stuff. Traveling and autistic people is not always great. I've had horror experiences with family holidays. Let's talk about this, please. So let's talk about how did you approach writing this part of the story, with sensory experiences of travel, new environments, that relate to people like yourself or, neurodivergent people? Yeah,
well, I guess a lot of that's just brought from my own experiences of travel over my lifetime. And I'm a terrible traveler. I'm absolutely awful. I can't sleep. I mean, it's amazing. I didn't get identified a lot earlier. Like my sleep kind of issues are so ginormous and they have to be so nailed down in terms of like, I can't sleep with anybody else. I've never been able to sleep with anybody else in the bed. I can't, I've got to have blinds, earplugs, eye masks, everything's got to be still. I have to have socks on in case there's gritty bits in the bed. Like just everything you can imagine has to be perfect. And if I get disturbed, I'm awake and I can't get back to sleep, all of that sort of stuff. So traveling's awful. I can't sleep on planes. I can't sleep in cars. I can't sleep anywhere except in this like totally perfect condition. And even then I might get 6.5, 7 hours, broken over the night kind of thing.
Completely similar to me, completely relate.
Yeah. So I knew that, a trip like this would be just horrendous for someone like me with those kind of sensitivities. And so obviously that's, Phoenix has those kinds of issues as well, and that just makes for so much conflict and potential disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my wife and I have this philosophy. It's like we only go on holidays, family holidays for the kids. We don't go on it for us. There's no such thing as a holiday for us or relaxation. And also we always agree that on day one up till about day 2 or 3, we're going to want to book flights that day to go home, and that's that. We're done, or go home. And if we know that if we just push through, we'll make it to the end of the week. The kids will have an amazing time. They'll talk about it for months and months and months because that's what they do. They go over and over and over and over and over. Yes. And we'll have done all we need to do. And we've just come to accept that, right? The expectations are gone. But when you look at it, when you break it down, it's like it's a story, it's a book, it's comedic, it's ridiculous. I mean, literally every holiday, night one, we're both like, that's it, we're going home today, we're going home tomorrow, book some flights, let's get out of here.
Totally. I have learnt very much, especially after having, my son, to just go, the bar just gets lower and lower and lower and lower every time. Yeah. And it's just literally my baseline is, Can we sit in a car for half a day to get to somewhere? Can we sleep in a different bed? Can we eat some different food? We have, a few photos and a bit of this, and then we'll just go home. Like that's it. My bar is so low now.
Yeah, there is no bar. That's right. The bar's been thrown away, and That's the thing, right? It's like, yeah, you get home and you go, oh, we have very little photos of this holiday. It's like, well, we can't do everything. It's like, at least the kids had fun. But yeah, you just feel like a failure of a family or a parent to normal families that have these amazing holidays, these amazing pictures, and we're like, I don't know. It's a blurry picture of the dude on the beach, It's like, I don't know what to say.
I have friends that take their young kids on planes overseas, and I'm just like, how? How does this happen?
No way.
Nightmare.
Yeah, we're talking a couple of hours because we're in Victoria. We're talking a couple of hours, so that gets us to Queensland basically. Yeah, and that's as far as it's going. Yeah. So, and even then, Queensland, we're talking like Coolangatta, Tweed Heads, basically New South Wales. We're talking as close to Melbourne as you can get, where it's still nice. Yeah, exactly.
So hey, put over the boundary and go, we're there. We made it to Queensland. Look, here we are. And we're done.
Technically, we can walk to New South Wales from here, but still. Yeah, that's the only gluten-free fish and chips. We've got to cross the road to New South Wales. Anyway, don't start me. I don't want to talk about it.
Gluten-free. Oh my God, I've been gluten-free since I was 15. It's so much better now. But oh man, yeah, the food. Just hunting down.
Yeah. My wife's got celiacs, and we have my wife has celiac disease. But you know what? As an autistic person, my gastrointestinal issues are just like horrific, which is very common. Yeah. So, I don't mind eating it, whatever, man. Like, whatever helps my belly, I'll do the best I can. All right. Now, your book, it really does talk about the importance of community and friendship. But how do you reckon these themes can be particularly important for us or for neurodivergent people? Because there's a disconnect there.
Definitely. And, I mean, we know that community and loneliness, if you read the studies out there on loneliness, I mean, it's not just us, at all in this sense. Loneliness is a massive, massive problem across the nation. And, the stats coming out on how big a killer it is of people actually in terms of their health and that sort of thing. So, community is important to everyone. And that's good because that's common ground of, themes and things to talk about there with community. And that's kind of the point actually that Phoenix makes a lot in this book, is that this is not just about us. This is actually about including a whole everybody, giving everybody sort of more support, because everyone needs more support. But, it's so important for us because we feel like, I'll speak for me. I have, felt so different and so alone sort of most of my life. And, person that's never fitted in, who never really, I was thinking about this before, and I did have, a couple of times maybe somebody I would probably call a best friend, but they were never like in school. They were like somebody who was out, or, they were a year older than me and they were somewhere else. But that, just that making friends and being so baffled by the sort of how people just form these, really tight and reliable relationships, and just, it's just so baffling. And so we do spend, until we sort of understand our own identity and our own neurotype, we just feel like a failed neurotypical. We just feel like we're just a failure. We just fail. We're just not good enough. And then, there's those horrible statistics on the number of negative feedback, negative comments that autistic and ADHD kids get over a year compared to, I can't remember them, but it's horrible. It's something like they get 25,000 extra negative comments a year kind of thing. Just, we're just constantly being told that we're wrong in one way or another. And so that you just start to feel like you don't actually belong anywhere. And so once you find that, and I'm one of these people, because I'm not very good at making connections, I create stuff and then people come to me. So like I'll start an environment committee and people will come to me, or I'll start a horse rescue charity and people will come to me, or, so I did the same thing with autism, of course. I started running autistic retreats, weekend retreats, and then people came, and then I met people, made connections with people, and now have an autistic friend, which is like really exciting. And it's just, it is really very magical. And I still just go, I can't believe I, actually made a friend as an adult. And it is just such a protective thing, because that's where you feel normal, and you get along and you make, it's just, look, I've lost my words on it. It's just really, it's incredibly important. Obviously, everyone wants to feel like they belong somewhere, and obviously not every neurodivergent person in the world is going to be your friend, but when you find them, that just, and I guess, which I think is funny too, because you do often find, like my husband and I, we both knew, both autistic, ADHD. We didn't know that when we met each other, but we were drawn to each other because obviously we had that same, just the same brain type that connected. And that happens a lot. You hear that story as well, that, birds of a neurodivergent feather flock together and you just find each other. So it's really amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
I mean, I can relate. And I think, there's a lifelong feeling of just not fitting in or something missing, a connection missing, two operating systems not connecting. And for me personally, I think, the not feeling like you're fitting in or part of something, for me, filtered through right down to even my own family. I almost felt like I don't know how we're the same. It's not that's not about your family. That's about me. But it just, I really struggle with those types of things. So I totally get what you're saying. It just feels like a disconnect. But I guess that comes down to what I wanted to talk to you about with creating this, I guess, a neurodivergent friendly society. From your experience, obviously the book looks through the lens, obviously for teacher, and you've obviously got your own experiences and your family's experience. What do you think we need? What kind of changes do we need? What do we need to talk about to make this a more neurodivergent friendly society, rather than just these kind of tokenistic awareness months?
Oh my gosh, yes, I know. It's a tricky month, April. Oh my gosh. I mean, where do we start, right? I mean, the simple answer is everywhere, right? I mean, I guess from a young person's perspective, obviously schools are a major, major source of trauma. We know this. The stats are there. We've all got the experience of it. And it's just doesn't actually take an awful lot to help, I think. So that's one thing. So obviously, institutionally, schools are a major source of, trauma for kids. We obviously need massive upgrades of education for people who are on the front line, the doctors, the psychologists, the teachers, everybody needs, a lot of information upgrade. And it's not their fault. Look, my first year teaching, I had a kid turn up in my class, year 8 or year 9, and they just went, "Oh, this new kid's arrived, and he's got Asperger's, and he's got a support person with him." And that was it, right? So it was my first year teaching. I'd not been taught anything about kids with disabilities at all in my training up to that. Nobody in-house gave me any information about it. There was no kind of education on how to work with a support person. There was just nothing. It was just, here's this kid, and that was it, right? So did I do well by that kid? No, absolutely not, because I didn't have any knowledge, any support or any training either. So, people only don't know what they don't know because they haven't actually been given the support and the education training to know what they need to know. So there's that. The medical systems, as we talked about. Just where do you even start?
The workplace, employment, they're massive, I reckon.
Absolutely. I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's just all levels. It's so massive, I don't even know where to start. But I do think often artists, comedians, writers, often it is the arts that cut through all of those things and capture people's attention and reaches people who aren't necessarily looking for it. So that's the thing, right? So if you put up a thing going, would you like to come and learn about autism? No one's going to go to that. If you write a book that's engaging and people happen to pick it up and read it, then they've accidentally acquired, all this knowledge, and that's a chance to sort of break through stuff. So I think arts are always right at the front line of changing people's ideas about things. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they stumble on stuff on YouTube, and that's how I get most people. I mean, it's just stumbling. I totally agree. I wanted to finish with what's your hope? What's the impact you're looking for? What do you really hope the novel? We can break this up into neurotypical, neurodivergent, but what's the impact you're hoping that the wonderful thing about Phoenix Rose will have on the readers, neurodivergent readers, and probably more importantly, neurotypical readers who hopefully will read this and actually understand and get some perspective. What's in here? What are you hoping to give? What experience are you hoping?
I mean, look, as a professional writer, the thing I have to actually focus on is creating a book that is entertaining. People want to spend time with the characters, and they get to the end and they go, wow, that was a good read. Right, so that has to be the top thing, because I'm not writing an academic book and I'm not writing a non-fiction book. I'm writing something for entertainment, and so that has to meet that criteria first and foremost. If it happens to do more than that, And people, and I know my books do, because people do email me over the years and tell me how things have, impacted them. If it happens to do more than that, if it happens to make them think a bit more, that's great. That makes me feel good, absolutely. But I'm also well aware that it's very early in this kind of transformation wheel that we're on in terms of neurodivergent people being identified, recognised, supported, and it's very early. In 10 years' time, it's going to be really, really different. So right now, I know that I'm planting seeds. I'm literally just planting seeds that may not sprout for another few years for people, but they're in there, and ultimately there is no benefit. And I don't know how many autistic people would agree with me with this. For me, I don't think there's any benefit whatsoever in my having disclosed my neurodivergence. I get nothing from that. If anything, I get backlash and more people looking at me weirdly than they ever did before. But the only reason I did that is to pave the way for it to be an easier world for my son to step into. That's it. Like, I'm 47, right? Culturally, people are just like, whatever, your time's done. So it's not about me. I'm not getting anything out of this at all. This is all about him being able to step into a world that is a bit more ready for him. Hopefully a lot more, but at least a bit more ready and a bit more kind and a bit more knowledgeable than it was when we were kids. And that's really it.
Yeah. I can't talk. I'm sorry. My brain's gone. I literally say the exact same thing in talks and videos. It's just, I'm blown away by the similarities. I mean, I literally say the same. It's like, I'm shot. I'm blacklisted. It's over for me. I'm done. I'm just doing this for my son, just trying to make it better for him, and hopefully that'll help other people. I mean, literally what you said is literally what I say and have thought. I can't even explain to you how that resonates and how that makes me feel. It's really amazing. I appreciate you saying that, because I'm shot. My brain's shot, Joe. I'm shot. It's amazing. I can't believe the similarities. I think people, they feel seen. They feel validated. They feel, they feel like, okay, I found people. I think that's what's really amazing about it.
Yeah, and I think because so many of us identified, again, the reason we're identified is because our kids were identified, and so we've lived it. We know what it's like to go through life not being supported and recognised. So of course we want the world to be better for them. So I think that's a normal kind of thing to just go, yeah, you know what? If I can change it, if I can make it better, if I can save him some of the pain that I had, then great, let's do it.
100%. Wonderful thing about Phoenix Rose, Josephine Moon. It's out. Congratulations, by the way. It's out now. Go and get it. Okay. Go and get it. Find it wherever you find your books, presumably, and I'm sure you'll love it. It's a fantastic read. But I really do appreciate you hanging out, and thank you so much for being here. I bet you've reached so many people watching this channel, more than I've ever reached in my whole bloody time doing the channel. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's just such joy to keep connecting with more neurodivergent people in the world. So thank you for doing what you're doing and putting yourself out there, because I know it's not always easy, and you're doing a great job.
What an incredible guest, huh? Late diagnosed, autistic Aussie, and author Josephine Moon. Now, if this video has resonated with you, I bet it has for quite a lot of people, share it with your family and friends. Hopefully it can help them too. If you've got a topic suggestion for an upcoming video, put it in the comments below. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Until my next video, thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk soon.